Good afternoon. Welcome to our audience and our panelists today. We are here in session 4 of the 4th Annual Decarbonisation in Shipping Forum, held by Capital Link. If you have attended the preceding 3 sessions today, you will know that they have covered so far the EU regulatory framework for decarbonisation of maritime, the implementation of that framework, and the last session took a pragmatic look at energy efficiency. This is the session in which we reflect on all of those topics together, and specifically from a ship owner's perspective. So if you're a ship owner in today's decarbonising industry, what are you doing right now? What is enabling or hindering you? What are you perhaps not doing yet? What are you going to do next? And where do the challenges and opportunities lay for you? I'll introduce in a moment the panelists who join me today to discuss those topics and share their perspectives. First, let me say, though, it is a real pleasure and a privilege to guide the conversation today. For those who don't already know me, I'm Rachel Hoyland. I'm a maritime decarbonisation lawyer. I've been working specifically on maritime decarbonisation for around about the last 5 years, and I do that work within law firm Stephenson, Harwood, with my fellow colleagues who have also been leading in this field since it began to emerge. Now, I'll be leading the questions to the panelists today, but they are also here to respond to questions that you might have. So if you want to pop those in the Q&A as we go along, we will try and incorporate those in the discussion as we go. So, my pleasure to introduce today. I have with me Mr. John Lycouris, who is the Head of Energy Transition at Dorian LPG, who are owners of a fleet of gas carriers. Also, Mr. Constantin Baack, who is the CEO of MPCC Container Ships, who, as you may have guessed, are the owners of a fleet of container ships. Also, Mr. George Saroglou, who is president of TEN, or Tsakos Energy Navigation Limited, and they are owners of a fleet of crude, oil, product, LNG, and shuttle tankers. And finally, Mr. Stavros Gyftakis, who is the CFO of Seanergy Maritime Holdings, and the CFO and Director of United Maritime Corporation, who are owners of a fleet of dry bulk carriers. So you'll see that we've got represented here a variety of market segments, and I'm very interested to hear where their perspectives on their experience of decarbonisation align, but also where they differ and why. So I'm going to open the conversation on that note, and I'm going to ask all the panelists, because each of your fleets is operating in a different market and it's subject to different relationship norms, different market norms, I'm curious to know what do you feel most keenly right now as the kind of key pressure to decarbonise? Does that come from the need to comply with regulations? Does it come from end user demand? Is it coming perhaps from your financiers? And just the headlines to begin with, because we're going to go into the details as we go. I'm curious to know, how is it that you're responding to that particular driver? I'll come to Constantin, if I may first. Could you answer that for us?
Sure, of course. Thanks, and thanks for having me, and thanks for hosting this event. I mean, first of all, market norms in general are not that different, right? Decarbonization is a global issue, and hence global actions are required. So maybe we start before we move into the different sectors on a more global scale. And of course, you know, certain targets and regulations are important to basically navigate all the owners in the whole industry through the decarbonization of the same. When you look at container shipping and simply looking at the order book, for example, you see that there is quite some order book related to innovative technologies or newer technologies, to put it that way. And that is something that we also focus in, and I'll get to that, I'm sure, later on in the discussion. But I think more generally, the pressure comes certainly from regulation. That sets the scene for the overall industry, and then within the different subsectors of the industry, there are different responses. There's also different likelihood of industry players to push forward on their decarbonization path, because you can sometimes share the risk better. And I think the container industry clearly is an industry where you are part of a logistical chain, and where there's an end consumer that has an interest and potentially even pays up for green modes of transportation. So I think this is a very collaborative sector of the industry, and we are definitely responding to that driver in particular with collaboration and cooperation with some of our charterers and partners, sharing some of the burden, sharing some of the cost, joint CapEx programs, etc. So there's all kinds of aspects that we follow jointly, and I'm sure we'll cover in more depth in the session. But I think in our case, certainly regulation, but also the drive of many industry players, certainly in the container industry, to actually take action is what drives or what is the response in our case. Okay,
well, that's really interesting to hear. Thank you for sharing that. Stavros, could I ask your opinion next, coming from more the dry bulk sector?
Of course. Good afternoon to you, Rachel, to our fellow panelists, and to our viewers. Years before the regulation coming into sight, we were driven by the need to make our fleet more fuel efficient, maintaining the competitiveness of the ships, and by this improve our commercial performance and the chartering economics. Compliance, of course, with the regulation, satisfying our financier ESG requirements is rather the outcome than the driver in some cases. Charters and financiers have both shown a clear preference for vessels with better environmental attributes. It's long before the regulations coming into play. Now, in terms of our response, we have been mainly focusing our strategy and efforts is making our fleet, which is on average 13 years old, more efficient by utilizing various retrofits, implementing existing yet proven technologies. We are taking sort of a full life cycle approach on the ships, looking to extend their economic life whilst continuing to be competitive on the chartering side. Also, in our case, in the case of the dry bulk industry, you have a very limited new building order book, and you have a reluctance for mass ordering from the owners. That implies that in this transitory phase, we have to live with the existing mid-aged fleet, and improving their efficiency makes an immediate impact for the sector and for the industry. So these retrofit projects we undertake in most cases in cooperation with end users, our charterers, either through co-investments and profit-sharing schemes, or through agreements to redescribe the vessels in the charter party as means to improve the daily rate thereafter.
Fantastic, thank you. That's interesting to hear that there's a little bit of difference there, I think, in terms of containers and dry bulk. George, could you perhaps illuminate the perspective for us from the crude oil product segment of the market?
Certainly. And thank you for inviting me, Rachel and Capital Link, and good afternoon to the fellow panelists. I want to start by stating the obvious that shipping is, of course, very vital industry for the global economy, as we transport almost 90% of all goods that are moved from A to B by ocean-going vessels. And shipping is responsible for about 3% of the greenhouse gas emission. And if you look at it, the amount of cargo that we carry over the distance with this 3% number, I think it shows that we're a very efficient business. But we are also a very adaptive business. And we have embarked in this decarbonization journey. And we feel that we believe very much that the agency who should set this decarbonization goal should be the IMO, because this way you have uniformity, and you don't create multiple rules and regulations that apply in different parts of the world, which sometimes create, instead of creating order, they create a little bit of a chaos, delays, and potential costs to the end user. So the first driver, I agree with what we've heard so far, is the regulations that are coming upon shipping to decarbonize. The second driver might be, being a public company, your shareholders. You have more and more, I think, funds that invest in shipping who are more interested in ESG-related matters. There is, in the last maybe year and a half, they have taken a back seat in their agenda, ESG agenda, but nevertheless, there are questions that we have to answer. And we have also the SEC, who is making climate risk important in the disclosure that you as a public company, you have to make from next year. And so you need to disclose your policies, your plans, how you are going to deal with climate risk. And I think the third driver is, of course, the financiers, the banks that lend you money to buy assets. Now, for the last 3-4 years, you have banks who are part of the Poseidon principles that request from you to periodically give them emission details and environmental details about the assets they finance. And we have not seen yet these assets, their finance, to be tied to, let's say, the environmental profile and performance yet. But I think this is something that will come as we move along in this decarbonization path. Now, how we are dealing with in this environment? What we're trying to do is mainly we try to sell older vessels and replace them with what we know is available out there today. That is more energy efficient and environmentally friendly vessels. And in the last, since the beginning of 2023, we have sold 13 vessels that had an average age of almost 18 years and had replaced them with new orders and modern acquisitions of 21 tankers that have an average age of 1 year. And especially a big part, 6 out of these 21 vessels are dual fuel vessels. This marks the entrance of our company into this dual fuel universe. And I think today, these 6 dual fuel Aframaxes that are capable of burning conventional fuel and LNG, liquefied natural gas, maybe we are one of the first, if not the first company with such large concentration in the water today of dual fuel vessels. And this is something that we are committed to continue on our own and together with our charters.
Okay, thank you. I hear that there's some kind of commonality in terms of drivers with containers and the dry bulk sector, but for yourselves, particularly as a publicly listed company, that perhaps introduces an additional set of drivers that can be felt quite keenly. Coming to you now, John, can I ask your perspective kind of across this drivers and response question? Where do you sit?
Of course, thank you for being invited on the panel, and also to my fellows invitees on the panel. I think we covered a lot of material here, but mainly the development of the ESG principles started back in 2017, 2015, 2016, 2017. It was apparent that it was going to happen. We all started looking at the opportunity of improving the performance of our ships and also the carbon profile of those vessels. We are lucky because at Dorian, we built most of our ships in 2015. They're all eco-built. We were one of the first companies that used scrubbers back in 2015 and used that as in an effort not only to clean the fuel emissions, but also to clean other emissions. As it happened, the IMO and the EU decided to start monitoring all the emissions in 2018. We have all been doing that in shipping, and I think it has put our focus on improving our profiles by measuring those results of our emissions. And it has put, in a way, the ESG principles of AER, as we call it, the annual efficiency ratios, the energy efficiency operational indexes or indicators, and reporting all our NOx and particulate matters, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we are going in the right way. We are moving in an effort, and we're using all the technology that we have that is available and proven. Along with scrubbers, there's energy-saving devices. There is other technologies that can help improve our operational and technological performance is called, and we have been doing that. So we are on a good track, I think, as a shipping industry goes to do a better job in the future. But we need new technologies, we need new fuels, and I think that's where the challenges are going to come.
Oh, well, that sounds like quite an optimistic outlook, so I'm pleased to hear that. Just picking up on your last comment there, John, what is your level of comfort, would you say, in investing in new fuels and technologies? Is that something you feel you're able to go forward with a high degree of confidence, or are you facing some challenges there?
There are a few things that we have to consider in new fuels. The maturity of the fuel as such, that is the availability of the fuel, the economic viability by buying this fuel, and of course the risk management of that fuel. All these are important matters in thinking about new fuels. I think we will have to use those new fuels because the 2030s are going to be quite challenging in meeting the emission requirements that the IMO has set for us and the EU. And I think we will be looking at trying to make sure that we can burn those fuels safely, and that there is a regulatory framework for those fuels with policies that support such fuels to be consumed in the shipping industry, you know, and that it works economically. So that's really the way I see it. Yes, there are many opportunities for fuels. Well to wake is one of our indicators that we will be watching for certain fuels, and dual fuels or the gas fuels and the gas engines are going to be probably a lot better for the future rather than the regular engines which burn one fuel.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. I'm hearing there's a few things that
Rachel, sorry, if I'm allowed to comment on this point, because
please go ahead.
the dry bulk industry tends to be a bit different compared to gas and tankers and containers, because it's more spot market oriented, and therefore the owners are less keen to invest in outright new technologies. The chartering market right now is not supportive of high capex new building projects, because we're lacking long-term fixed revenue contracts at rates that can support such capex. And that's why we have seen underinvestment on the dry bulk side in alternatively fueled tonnage, and the few orders that we have seen concerns conventionally fueled vessels. Unfortunately, or fortunately for the other gentleman on the panel, investing in new technologies are more prevalent in sectors like containers, tankers, gas carriers, where you have ships that are usually built with time charters attached, which guarantee a certain level of return on investment. And then you have end users and ship owners in a better position to coordinate their actions. In our industry, I think investing in energy-saving modifications on our ships has a clear and tangible payout right now, have clear benefits. And I think that the cost, the typical cost for this kind of retrofits that will ensure that your vessels remain competitive is much more reasonable in the 1 to 2 million space.
Now, you mentioned earlier, Stavros, you've done quite a lot of retrofitting of your fleet. I'm wondering, have pilot projects been important to you within that process to be able to model and gain some experience of, as you say, the economics of the deployment of energy efficiency technology?
of pilot projects can be very important, especially when you factor in the level of technological uncertainty that we're faced with. The Act kind of control experiments of sorts, which allow owners, charterers, classification societies, manufacturers, shipyards to test different solutions on smaller scales before deciding on actual large-scale commercial applications. And equally important, in most cases, pilot projects are collaborative initiatives that promote cooperation between major stakeholders and also come with sort of alternative funding arrangements, which include either cost distribution or supranational backing. As an example, we announced this year Seanergy to be the first Greek-based shipping company to accomplish a strategic partnership in the European Union-funded Safecraft Project Consortium, which is a breakthrough initiative concerning the utilization of alternative fuels, and specifically, we will contribute a conventionally fueled Capesize vessel to be retrofitted to use hydrogen as the main energy source for electric power generation, as well as for a portion of its propulsion needs. And this can potentially lead to a 26% reduction in CO2 emissions. This is a collaborative initiative with the cooperation of 2 classification societies, 4 universities, and 2 other industry partners. So in absence of a more concrete decarbonization plan on the part of regulations, and given that we have a very low willingness from the charter side in the dry bulk space to invest in new technologies, such pilot projects can have a very important role to play in reaching our targets.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's really interesting to hear, and it sounds like there's a lot of development and experimentation going on, which is very encouraging. If I can come to you, Constantin, and kind of roll those last 2 questions into one, because I understand things are perhaps a little different in the container space. Your level of comfort in investing in new fuels and technologies, I understand you're very much on that journey, and the role that perhaps pilot projects might have or have not played for you in advancing advancing your fleet in that way. Could you comment on that, please?
Sure, and we are indeed developing certain projects. So we feel, I wouldn't say quite comfortable, but we feel comfortable in collaborating and cooperating with our charter partners and even cargo owners in developing projects that address the issue, right? And where you share certain investment and technology risk across the partners, so to say. I think that is very important. That's probably different in containers than in others. I mean, we have dual fuel methanol vessels on order to be delivered this year, where we have 15-year charters and a 15-year COA. So there's a clear collaborative and cooperative approach by the different parties. We are the owner, we have ordered, we have a time charter, so we have commitments from different, and a COA, so we have commitments from different parties across the chain. And I think this is very important as a starting point. Having said that, we're also involved in we own a stake in a producer for synthetic diesel, which would make the existing fleet greener once that can be explored further and accelerated. This is obviously a journey. It says energy transition for a reason, because it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, right? It will take time. So I think in one thing is whether we are prepared to take the investment decision and the risk. And yes, we are there to do so together with partners. And I personally believe that if you don't put your toe into the cold water, you will never advance. So there's also a balancing between moving forward, but not rushing into something that creates also financial risk for us as a company, right? So it's finding the right balance. And I think the best way to approach that is through collaboration. At the same time, and I think that comment was made by some of my fellow panelists here already, retrofitting. I mean, retrofitting is there all over the place all the time, right? This is nothing new. And retrofitting is super important. It's a key component in our fleet renewal process. One is adding new vessels, new builds, which are firstly more efficient in general, and then have dual fuel optionality. And the second one is to invest into our fleet. And we do 20 retrofits this year alone. So we are significantly investing into our ships, where we also partly share the burden and the benefit with our charter partners. And to your last question on pilot projects, well, we are also involved in think tanks like the Mercer McKinney Center of Zero Carbon Shipping, Silk Alliance. So I believe collaboration has a financial aspect, and it also has an information sharing and growing aspect. And that, I think, is super important in our industry, which is a truly global industry. So you need to share your information, your learning curve with others, because it will not be something where one day you wake up and you have the final solution. It is a transition and it takes time. And we have allocated funding to it, we have allocated resources to it. And I think this is, in our view, the way to go about it. And that includes pilot projects, obviously, with partners.
I think you illuminate a really important aspect that we heard about quite a bit in the prior session as well, which is the collaboration piece and the importance of quite a wide network of relationships to enable. I wonder, particularly thinking within your market segment, Constantin, is there an example of perhaps key relationships that have really helped you to move forward with things?
No, absolutely. And it is our charterers. I mean, a ship is not just a ship that you charter out to someone, certainly not in containers, especially the last 5 years has shown reliability is key for everyone in the value chain, because delays disrupt the whole logistical chain when it comes to containers. So there is a very, very close dialogue with our chartering partners. And we have created joint retrofit programs with various liner partners of ours, not to put any name to it, but with various parties. We have agreed on joint profit sharing of benefits in terms of savings, etc. So there is a constant dialogue, and we're operating on the same platforms as far as data exchange is concerned, on consumption and hence emissions. So there is I would say, a very, very collaborative and integrated path. Not with everyone. I think there are also parties that are more forward-leaning and parties that are less forward-leaning when it comes to sharing data and also collaborating. But I think the trend is our friend there. I think clearly the trend is towards more transparency, collaboration, and joint efforts. And again, joint retrofits into vessels in exchange for longer charters or even participation in CapEx. This is what we have seen over the years, and this is what I expect to take place going forward. Obviously, always looking at us as owner to take certain risk as well. That is clear. I mean, we're definitely there to contribute, but I think it's a matter of collaborating, and it's obviously easier if you have long-term time charters compared to the other sectors where you operate in the spot market. That is clear. But we have done many of these projects over the last 3 years.
Wow, that's great to hear that you've got that buy-in. I think Stavros, we're hearing not so much buy-in because you're in the spot market environment. George and John, can I invite you to comment on kind of where relationships are perhaps particularly enabling you in your decarbonisation journeys? I'll come to you, George, first, if I may.
Yes. Well, in tankers, our main clients are the energy majors and the big commodity traders. And I think we depend very much on what is their own idea about decarbonization, because they have assets that they want somehow to use. They're public companies, they exist. You have, an oil major who might be long on LNG, another one who might be considering methanol, different ideas. So we are here to deal with whatever their requirements are. And if we can develop jointly projects together that might be 5-10 years old charters, then this is the way for this joint decarbonization to move on. Because otherwise, if you don't have the support of, we are not in the fuel oil. I mean, we don't produce fuel oil. We are users of fuel oil. So what is available today? It is LNG and it is biofuel. This methanol, ammonia, and if we want to go one step further, green methanol, green hydrogen, green, all the greens, zero carbon or low carbon fuels might not be available in a wide scale today. And you cannot order a vessel, take a decision on the next 15, 20 years without knowing where you will bunker. Because the other different thing with other sectors is that you have the charterer who is responsible, if the vessel is on time charter, for procuring, the bunker fuel, whatever the bunker fuel is. But if you trade in the spot market, today you are in Singapore, tomorrow you are in Fujairah, next morning you are in Malta. And you need to make sure that you find fuel that is both available and affordable in order for you to be able to continue, performing. And this today is not there. Of course, in 5 or 10 years from now, I also believe that we will be living in a multi-fuel world, and different options will be available for everybody to choose what they will do. But for today, for the next 5 years, if you want to make an investment, unless you have some sort of control over in the fuel supply chains, which a tanker owner doesn't have, you have to go with what is available. And what is available is LNG and biofuel. That's why you invest in this type of vessels.
Okay, thank you. There's an important point in there that I'm going to come back to, but I'll just ask John quickly first, whether there's a perspective you want to share in respect of key relationships that are perhaps enabling for you in this environment.
Sure. I think mainly our customers would be and are all the time interested in newer technologies, and that's why we always strive to put newer technologies on our vessels. We did it in the beginning when we built the ships, and we continue to do that by adding value to the vessels, adding CapEx, and trying to get an improved performance, a reduced emission, and an asset that is attractive to our customers. And that's
are they willing? Sorry to interject. Are they keen enough for those new technologies that they're willing to profit share with? That they're willing to cost profit share with you on that?
Some of them are willing to profit share and are willing to take them. Yes, indeed they are, and we have done that. And I think that's a winning formula for the future, because when the charter is willing to share the upside for a new technology, this is where we can make a significant difference in our emissions. Yes.
Thank you.
I don't want to say anything more. I know you have other issues you want to touch. I'm happy to.
There's so much to cover, as always.
Yes, right.
But a point I want to go back to, which George just raised, and this is a question to everybody, is, and perhaps we'll take it as a poll, sort of fairly briefly, yes, no. Is there a role for ship owners to play, I wonder, in investing in upstream fuel supply, which is something that we see some ship owners do? So considering the market segments you each sit in, I'll come to Stavros first. Yes, no, is there a role to play for ship owners in investing in upstream fuel supply?
No, I think each party should focus on its own part of the process. Fuel supply is a different industry, more technologically complicated business, does not share the same intricacies and know-how shipping, so each one should stick on their field of expertise.
Okay, so it's a no from you, Constantin?
I would share that notion. I think it's. I mean, we are invested in a synthetic fuel producer, but this is more to first of all, we believe it's an interesting investment. It's a small investment only, but it's more to gain more insights and network. I think to invest in fuel supply would not be on the cards for us, and I think it's such a huge investment. I mean, for the whole energy transition in shipping, you need probably 85% of all the investments have to be carried out onshore and only 15 on board of the ships, right? So we have to focus on our part, in my view, and that is for others to carry out. And I think that's the way it should work. However, collaborating, contributing our part to it, but certainly not to get involved in investments in upstream.
Okay, so we've got 2 no's. George, yes, no? Any different perspectives?
No from my end as well.
No, it's a no from George. And John?
I differ.
May we hear why?
It's not invest, it is involve that is more important. You have to be involved in your future ecofuels or biofuels, because you want to know where they come from, what type of fuel you're going to be burning and you're going to be putting on your ship, what kind of well-to-wake index, carbon index does that fuel have, where it has come from. It's a number of items that we need. We will be forced to burn new fuels. Unless we know well what we are burning, we're not going to be buying just anything that comes across on the bow of the ship to be bunkered. So
Okay.
I completely disagree with that. We need to be more involved with what fuel we're going to burn.
Okay.
Maybe just one addition there, Rachel, just one addition
Go
from
for
my
it.
side. And I agree with the involvement part. I
Yeah.
must make that difference because in the end,
Yeah.
you know, we have to know what our crews are burning, right? And the crew handling is an aspect that we might touch on later on, but I think this is key. Safety of the crew is important, and that's the most important thing. I was more referring to investing rather than involving. And there I share John's notion that we should get involved.
Yeah, I share the same view. Investing is different. Being involved is a completely different story. And I think there is more things that needs to be done, not just from us. I think we are doing our part. More things has to be done by the other stakeholders, including, I have to say, you know, those who produce the fuel oil, the supply chains who should make sure that they deliver the right fuel for our vessels, and all the other testing agencies. There is a whole universe of stakeholders that need to perform much better.
Yeah. Okay. So as a temperature gauge across this representation of the industry, we're definitely hearing involve, but perhaps not invest.
I agree, Rachel. I mean, my point was more in terms of integrating fuel supply in our business, which is something that we have seen other, big fuel consumers like Trafigura doing these sort of moves. But this always represents a very small part of the business. It's rarely substantial. So I'm involved, of course, we should, and we should know what fuel we're burning and to what extent. I mean, it will assist us in achieving our goals. But this is something different than investing and integrating the supply business in our businesses.
Okay, thank you all for that. Well, as a closing question, because we're fast approaching the end of our session, keeping the focus on kind of where to involve, can each of you please give me briefly one area of opportunity that you see opening for your business in connection with decarbonisation and the work that you're doing to decarbonise at the moment? I'll come first to you, George, please.
The opportunity is, I think, with our charterers to move ahead and invest in greener vessels and embark in this decarbonization journey with a more clear, let's say, knowing a little bit better what you should do. Of course, we are going to take a risk as ship owners, but it's better to know that you have your major clients who call you, you develop projects together, and this is how you build your fleet for the next 10, 15 years. So this is, for me, it's a collaboration. You need to collaborate, and we need to to make sure that each party picks up their task.
Fantastic, thank you, John. A key opportunity that you see for the business?
Well, yes, the key opportunity is that we have an opportunity to improve our operational efficiency. We have an opportunity to improve our technological efficiency in our ships, and we have an opportunity to do collaborative partnerships for new projects and new technologies. So I think all these three are very important key factors in decarbonizing the future of shipping.
Okay, so a real trajectory of improvement. Stavros, any different comments on that?
I very much agree to what George and John said in terms of opportunities to be more efficient, to decarbonize the fleet. But given, the very limited order book and the reluctance for orders by the owners in the dry bulk space, I think opportunities to make money are at the mid-age ships that are out there. You can buy them, and under the assumption of some retrofitting, you can still make very good economics. And this has been evident actually in the levels of the S&P market recently, because the values of these ships have been going up like crazy. So that's where I see the opportunities.
Okay, so a new window for different kind of asset play, perhaps. And then Constantin, do you have a perspective you can offer us on this?
I share with most of what has been said. I think it's jointly collaborating and investing into ships as an owner and getting some in exchange, at least in the container space. Joint retrofits is a huge opportunity because you have an aligned interest. Joint new building programs with our charter partners is another one. And last but not least, and that maybe relates a bit to the dry bulk sector, because in containers you also see certain vessels trade quite volatile when you look at values, right? And any transition, there will create disruptions also in asset values. And I think there's also a great opportunity if you have the right partners. We, for example, bought secondhand ships, agreed with the charterer on a joint retrofit, and extended the charter. I think these are opportunities that not everyone has. You have that if you have a good dialogue with your partners. And if you are in constant dialogue with your partners, so you can identify also the, let's say, more vintage ships that, however, with a good retrofit can be made way more efficient, and you can get payback for that quite nicely. And I think this is a win-win situation between charterers and owners. And I think that in a transition phase can definitely be opportunities that have not been there in the past.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that's great to hear that. I think decarbonisation perhaps presents this opportunity for the different stakeholders in shipping to really come together to be able to generate improvements in ship technology, emissions reductions, and to create a perhaps more economically and technologically advanced fleet for the future. So thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your perspectives. I really appreciate your time and your input today. And thank you to our audience for joining us. It's been a pleasure, and we will see you again on another occasion, I'm sure. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you, Rachel.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.